Thanks, Janine. Hello, everybody. This is the October meeting of WPE Waterfront Parks Environment Committee for Manhattan Community Board 4. By order of the governor, still, we are having this meeting of the committee by video, open to the public. We have two agenda items tonight. The first is an update by New York City Parks and questions and discussions to follow. And then we also have a committee discussion on our statement of district needs, which is due in a few short weeks. And that is where each committee on Community Board 4 will prioritize their budget asks. And we'll go over what has been funded from our previous asks last year and previous years, and what is still on the list and what new might be added to the list over our discussions from the past year and letters we have written. But since Parks is the first agenda item.
She's on trying.
Oh,
She says she's trying to get on.
Oh, I don't see her. Let me check my email, see if she's asked me.
She says, maybe I have the wrong link. Can you resend her the link, Janine? Because she's texting that I'm trying to get in.
Okay, yeah, I'll forward it to her again. Thanks, Sally.
Okay.
Co-chair, may I just?
Yes, Chris, go ahead.
May I request just a few seconds for new business, but it's a light new business.
Absolutely, yeah. When we get to new business, I think there's a few things I know.
This is light front end, and I think it'll fall like onto the wayside if it just waits.
Oh, you mean right now?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah, go ahead.
It's very light. So everyone on WPE, on behalf of the alumni of the High School for Environmental Studies, I've sat in this committee for the last 6 years, and I truly do appreciate, and the administration appreciates, everyone's efforts to prioritize funding and to prioritize the lease for the High School for Environmental Studies being renewed. Tomorrow, Friday, October 14th, from 4:30 till about 8 p.m. the High School for Environmental Studies will be hosting our first annual reunions in conjunction with the newly formed PTA. We've had reunions before the pandemic, but this is our first one in person and with the PTA. So I invite the Waterfront Parks and Environment Committee to contact me, and if you can attend, because we were the first in the nation. We are the first in the nation, and we're very proud of that. And we always love working with you here. So that's it. That's my new business.
Great, thanks, Chris. Okay, so let's get to new business chair report. Marty, before we do that, do you have anything to add to the intro? No? Okay. So the chair report, we are, if you were at full board or you saw the video, Jeffrey introduced that Community Board 4 was chosen by the Capstone Group, which is a NYU graduate studies group. And we were chosen as a client of theirs. And what that means is they will do kind of whatever the parameters we set, but they're going to look into, I don't want to say reinventing, but how we can reinvigorate, how we can modify, how we can update the far west side of our district. So we're talking Hudson River, the West Side Highway, and then a little bit into 11th. So a very small sliver going north to south our district. We have 2 members from each committee that is touched with this. So it's going to be 2 members from WPE, 2 members from the land uses, and 2 members from transportation. I don't think all committee members have been decided yet, but we will kick that off with Capstone tomorrow. So I will report back, and this will be ongoing throughout this year and the first semester of next year. So we can talk as a group on what is important to us, access. The reason why WPE is involved is because it's access to the park, and a lot of it is park land and park access, that west side. So we can talk about what we think priorities are for that and what maybe should be included in their scope of study. And then they will come back with a plan for us that we'll go back and forth with, I'm sure, a number of times. and we will continue the discussion. So that's that with Capstone. Does anyone have any questions about Capstone or what we're doing with that?
You want to say something about footpaths and closing the highway as part of the considerations?
Say that, I'm sorry, Marty?
Do you want to say something about bridges and closing the highway as alternative visions of what's going on, or just leave that?
Well, I
tomorrow?
think that tomorrow is going to be the kickoff meeting to determine the scope. I think there's a lot on the table. I mean, everything from, widening the greenway to overpasses for better pedestrian access, pedestrian footbridges, to transportation considerations with deliveries on 11th and 12th. It's going to be very broad going in. And I think Capstone Group will kind of work with us to narrow our vision, because I think it also includes some zoning and some housing, which I don't know if it's necessarily the priority in this particular project, but will be in the discussion. So Sally and Chris, are those hands up from before, or is this?
Oh,
about-
no, sorry. That was about Therese.
Okay,
This is relevant to
sure.
what was just said. So yesterday at land use, like a minute, you're waving.
Oh, there you go. I think you were like breaking up a bit, but just start over. I think. Now
Okay, so I have unstable internet. Thank you, Rain. Yesterday at the Hell's Kitchen Land Use Zoning Committee, we discussed this for about 5 minutes. Janine was there. Martine, to answer your question, it's broad in terms of what the study could be for land use. It could encapsulate the upzoning of the 11th 12th Avenue corridor, and it can also consider even what's the term that's being used for the Bronx Cross Bronx Expressway capping of the Henry Hudson Parkway, or otherwise known as Route 9, and to expand that and create a green space there. So it's very it's an open concept study. So it's not just like granular to the expansion of a bike path or pedestrian bike path at Hudson River Park. So it's very broad, as Leslie said, but I believe the land use committee has already. Thank you.
Thanks, Chris. And to update that as well, we had our first internal working group meeting on that today, about how we were going to attack that and how, we're going to present to Capstone tomorrow. So, like I said, we can talk about that further in new business if anyone has ideas, but it will be an ongoing discussion. Definitely. It's not like a 1 week, 2 week project. We're talking months here. So there will be room definitely for everyone to voice their opinion and have this committee weigh in. Now that I see, we can keep going on new business and chair report, but you know what? Now that I see Therese is there, I'm just going to interrupt myself and go to the first item of the agenda, because I don't want to keep Therese too long. Therese, can you hear us now?
I sure can. Just had to unmute. Sorry.
Oh, great. No worries. Go ahead. The floor is yours for parks.
So as far as updates, I was just going to mention Hell's Kitchen and the basketball court and the renovations that we were hoping to get done there, which will resurface it. That's going to happen in spring. The contractor's registered. They just need to come in when it's not going to be cold and lay down the asphalt, let it cure, and then put in a seal coat. As far as the Matthews Palmer, we had a lot of complaints about the shed there, and there was a lot of things being placed under it. The netting that's there was damaged quite often. So we have staff going there twice a day to check the park. But if anybody sees anything wrong, they're welcome to email me or contact me through the board. The best we can do is just address at the moment we see something there until that project is over, which I hope is sooner rather than later. And as far as it's my park day, there's a lot of projects going on throughout the 5 boroughs. So I'll be happy to share any of those projects you guys want to come out to in our district. And are there any other points that I need to mention to bring up updates on?
I don't think so. I think maybe we are going to talk about Chelsea Green a little bit. We are going to talk about Penn South Playground. which aren't necessarily, on the ground updates like you were doing. But if there's any questions on that, feel free to raise your hand, ask Therese.
Great.
So I'm not sure, Leslie, are you saying to discuss it now or you want to bring it up later?
Let's discuss it now because Therese is here. And while we have her, we
Okay.
can discuss all the park stuff.
Okay. So Therese, if you could offer an update on rats, that would be great. I was in the park this afternoon for a meeting when I luckily did not see it, but a rat did scurry across somebody's foot in the middle of the afternoon. So anything that you could fill us in on that would be great. And Therese is well aware we had an invasion in the park last week during the night, and graffiti was sprayed all over our brick wall. Parks was very responsive. It's cleaned up now, but it's an issue that we were concerned about from day one when the park was being developed. The Friends group and the community wanted a 6-foot fence. And at that time, the commissioner he didn't want any, the Commissioner Silva said 4 feet, that's it. We didn't push it. We just wanted to get the park built, but we knew that this was a problem that was going to develop, and it has. It was right, I think, at the same time that Clement Moore got a 6-foot fence, and we wound up with a 4-foot fence. I personally, on several occasions, seen teenagers climbing over the fence during the night. I can't report any nefarious behavior. I haven't witnessed any, except for that horrible experience with the graffiti, which again, Parks came in and they got it cleaned up. But it's time for the 6-foot fence. And Therese and I have discussed it a little bit. Whatever next steps have to be taken to get that that expenditure would be greatly appreciated in this community. And I speak not just from the viewpoint of a member of this committee, but I'm also president of the Block Association. And so everybody on 20th Street is on my back about it. That's it.
So I can mention about the rodents. What we've been doing is going by, we literally cleared up a lot of our shrubbery so that we could get underneath it and treat the rat holes as often as possible, which is burrow baiting and trying to collapse the holes the moment we see them, because the more that they have to tunnel, the less chance they have to get out and eat or create more rats. And there's also a few more voids that we also checked with Department of Health. And I need to get an update on that because they were also checking on what was going on behind the buildings that could be contributing to the rats getting more food and them also having a place to be undisturbed. So there's a few voids that are behind the corner, especially on the south side, that have quite a lot of debris that nobody has access to. So that's something that we were discussing. Other than that, it's just that we're going to be clocking all of the gates to keep people out of the garden beds, so that we can more aggressively treat those beds and keep the children out, and putting up signs to that as well, because people have also been using the restroom, I think, in those beds quite a lot and gotten used to it. And, rats will eat anything they find. And so you really don't want the kids playing around that kind of situation anyway. So closing off those garden beds, like you said, just trying to keep on top of the trash. We requested, and this is one of the points I was going to mention. I'm like, I was 4 points I was supposed to mention. That we requested a mini packer, which is a small 6-yard garbage truck. And one of our big garbage trucks that you see are 16 yards, and they really service the whole of 2 districts, which is Community Board 4, Community Board 5. And that requires a special CDL license. The small 6-yard does not. And a lot more of my staff are allowed to drive that truck, which will give us more power to expand our operations for the garbage removal. And we lost our 6-yard packer about 4 or 5 years ago. And we really have needed it. It's really dire when we can't immediately pick up the trash and throw it into the trash truck. Right now, what we're doing is putting it into the back of a truck, taking it to somewhere it can be staged, or taking it to the big truck and putting it in at a central location. So it's a lot more labor intensive if we don't have another truck that people can drive. So it's really great. We got the funding. So
Well, on
looking
a happy
forward to that.
note, I mean, I don't know if you know, but according to Sean Cochran, who was at our CCBA meeting, I think they've ordered the Packer. I think it's going to.
Yes, they have. Yeah, they
We
ordered the
are
Packer.
going
They funded it. We're ordering it. I don't have the details as to what I'm getting yet, but we're
Won't
looking
be here
into it.
tomorrow, but it's coming. Okay. And I
So
just-
Therese, isn't it, we had a meeting with Parks yesterday, was it Therese, with you guys?
Yes,
Oh my gosh, it's only been yesterday. Feels like
yesterday
Um,
at 3 o'clock. So yeah.
Was it? Oh, wow, it was yesterday afternoon. But wasn't they said the mini packer would take at least a year or a year and a half to come?
Long time.
Well, it depends on what type and the
And we're
funding.
pushing for electric.
I
said they were
think
looking
if they exist yet, I don't know if our garbage trucks exist in electric yet. So I
Well,
hope
Steve
they
said that they might have to do an electric right? He was saying that it
think there
might
are
be a
some
requirement.
mandates trying to get us to be fully electric. So we'll see. We're working on figuring out what type of truck is coming.
I have
Alright.
one more follow-up question on Chelsea
course.
Green, please. My building had requested via our exterminator, the trimming of the plantings that are allowing the rats to climb onto terraces. Has that been addressed?
I didn't see which terrace you were talking. Is that the back of the park? The very
It's that,
rear?
yeah, it's the back of the park.
Yeah, we had them trim the bushes. I don't think they trimmed the actual vines that are growing. I can go back there and make
That's
sure.
really
that's done.
important because winter's coming and these rats are climbing up onto terraces in my building.
So they're
and
using
our-
the vines.
Our exterminator said that this was their pathway into the terraces, and come December, it'll probably be the pathway into our apartments. So it would really be nice. I mean, I don't understand how these things work, but they were very specific.
No, I can get on that right away. It's something
Okay,
that we can
that
do.
would
If
be
the
great.
vines are climbing up the building into the terrace, that can be removed.
Yeah, it's plantings that are over there near those terraces. You can see them.
Is it bushes or is it vines?
I don't know. You might want to talk with Michael Walsh about it, but I know the president of the co-op and the exterminator and maybe the Department of Health. They may have all.
But if they could take a picture and send it to me, that would make it much faster. I'll address
Okay.
exactly the issue they're talking about.
Okay, I'll locate it and do that. Thank you.
Right,
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thanks, Sally. And before we get to Brad, I just want to follow up on something that Sally mentioned with the fence. So, we have the board has asked for higher fences at certain parks to be built. I don't know if it's in a letter. I will have to check, but I know the new park at the DEP site that there were requests for at least 6 to 8 foot fences. And we were declined, said, no, everything is going to be at least right at 4 foot. Is it, Therese? But we're finding problems with that. So I'm just mentioning it to the committee because that is something we might want to officially address as a committee, maybe next month or the month after, as far as writing a letter. I don't think now we'll have a discussion about it. I don't know if now is the time, but FYI, that has been on the radar, not just for Chelsea Green, but for other.
Yeah,
projects
it's
as
really
well.
important. It's really
Yeah.
important. It depends on the positioning of the park. I mean, the way this park is situated in the middle of people's homes, it's really essential. It's just a horror scene waiting to happen, and it's beginning to happen.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks.
Thank you.
Thanks. Brad?
Hello, any update on the squash courts?
Those are the ones that were requested for Chelsea Park.
They were the former handball courts.
At Chelsea
They
Park.
did a whole-
Yeah, at Chelsea Park. I don't have that update with me now. I don't know what process we're at on that front. I know that they were meeting about it I think 4 months ago.
So
but
they're
I've
not the
heard
former handball courts. They're still the handball courts.
yeah, they're not going to change. I think they're just going to allow something more to happen. So I don't know if that's approved yet. So I have to find out.
Yes, please do, because I think it was a private, with some private funding in a public park, we're very interested in how that process was working. Because that opens up a lot of other doors. Thank you.
Matt?
Hey, Therese, good to see you. I was walking in the neighborhood yesterday and someone mentioned to me that another tree was cut down in Hell's Kitchen Park. I was wondering if you had any additional information on that.
Sorry, I was muted. Is this the tree from a while back, or was it a street tree
I
in the
know-
neighborhood?
I wish I knew. I know that there was one that was cut down a while back, maybe last year. This sounded like another tree, the way it was explained to me.
No, I think it's the one that was cut down about maybe it died about a year ago, and it was cut down I think about 6 months, but I can get specific dates. But that's the one in the middle of the playground.
Okay, so as far as you know, it's just been that one tree.
Yeah, I think they're
Okay.
referring to that tree if we're thinking about the same
Yeah. Okay.
email.
Thanks.
You're welcome.
And I guess while Teresa's here, we could just, I mean, this is gonna be a part of our budget discussion too. But another update is the Penn South playground, which we have been advocating for. Actually, the ask was always for the resurfacing of the basketball courts, which always proved too costly. But now we will be getting a whole new playground. I know we reported on this, I believe, last month. So hopefully it's going to take a while, because now we found out that Parks has to hire out for an engineer for water retention. So that's gonna add a lot of time onto the project. No surprise. But I think we can start the public planning discussion at least, and we'll talk to Parks about that. Because at least if we have a vision or ideas from the public of what we want to see, what we don't want to see, it might get the ball rolling, at least to give to them a list so they can start while they have this engineer, the water retention engineer, working and doing. But we're going to count that actually, Therese, as a big win for our budget asks, which is great, because we'll put that down to continuing support now, and we can get it off our lists. So that's going to be a great project to work with you on. It's a nice big redesign. It's a juicy redesign.
Yeah, looking forward to it.
Yeah. Anything else for Therese before we let her go?
Leslie, there's 4 people in the attendee section with their hands up.
Oh, great. Let me go over there.
I'm gonna bring over Catherine, Michael, Deborah, and Susan.
And there's also a 5th one, Stephen.
Oh, Stephen, yes, I just saw that.
Great. Thanks.
You're welcome.
Thanks for keeping us honest, Janine.
No problem.
Oh, Chris, is this for Therese?
Yeah.
Oh, go ahead.
Real quick, on Google, the children's playground is marked as closed. Any particular reason as to why? In Hell's
Children?
Kitchen Park.
Oh, in Hell's Kitchen. That's strange.
Just wanted to mark that. It's just
Google.
that's really an administrative thing, because kids are playing there, so I don't want families to be deterred from going there.
Yeah, no, Google. We don't really have control over them. The internet's a big thing. I wish we did. It'd be great.
Candace?
Hi, I was just wondering if this was like the part I would talk about, like just tree placements. I was just wondering if how you guys figure out where trees get placed. In the new, in my block, I'm on 30th, and we had a tree get taken down by like a moving van, and it got cut off. But then we have one that's going to be placed now on a turning lane, and I'm just I would like to know more information. I know we have a long agenda ahead of us, but maybe we could come back and how you guys decide that. I've looked on the website and when the trees will be replaced at this time, but of how you guys actually figure out where the trees will be placed in the neighborhood, because it's just a weird spot for a tree to be right now. So yeah, just wondering if you can give me
You said
information.
it's in the middle of a turning lane?
It's on the middle of a turning lane. It's on the corner. It's on 30th and between 8th and 9th on the 8th Avenue. There's going to be I'm on mute. No, there'll be they have a new one that's going to be placed by the end of the year. It says it's been marked out. And it's just, like I said, we have large trucks that come down 30th And so if a large truck's gonna come to turn, if they're even going down our street, they're knocking trees down. So that's why I wanted to know when if it's gonna be a turning lane of how you guys are gonna kind of protect that.
Well, if it doesn't have current protection, just let me know. Do you have my email?
I do not, but I can get it from the board and
Right.
go
Yeah,
into
and
further
we can
detail.
follow up with that through our street trees division and find out what's going on with that. Because each and every single one goes through a forester's inspection.
Uh-huh.
And even with that, we consider how big the tree is going to be, how much it's going to be damaged, how much it gets involved in traffic for sure, because that happens. You don't want a short tree that's going to stick its arms right under traffic. So they make a lot of determinations, especially the size of the tree pit and where it's located. Is it going to get enough water and be able to survive? So it just depends on all those factors, and they are experts, so I leave it to them. So anything I have questions on, I go straight to them on it.
I'll definitely do a follow-up email with you and get that information. Thank you.
Thank you.
Brad, is your hand up again or from before?
Quick question for district needs. I'm sure we asked the parks on what they were looking for, right?
Yes, we had our meeting yesterday.
Yeah.
We'll have
Thank you.
that'll be in our discussion when I mean, it all pretty much lined up with what we already had, but there's a lot of overlap, but there's a few that might be new, ones that we haven't talked about yet though in committee that we'll discuss that we're going to hold off on, or we'll talk in depth a little later today.
But they definitely gave us a number one.
Yeah, they gave us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, and 7. They gave us a bunch.
They're all number one.
Yeah. Depends on who you talk to in parks. Okay, so let's go to the public. Catherine?
Hello, Community Board 4. My name is Catherine Hedden. And first of all, I wanted to say that thank you very much, because I came at the tail end of the last meeting where Hudson River Trust had done that fabulous presentation about the pickleball court. And thank you to them and to you for approving that and getting that done. With that said, you've heard me ask this question many times before because I've been coming to these board meetings a lot. The update on the Hell's Kitchen Park resurfacing. Hi, Therese. The Hell's Kitchen Park resurfacing, which I was told a long time ago was the budget was approved, and then I was told it was insurance purposes. I had put in a proposal to have maybe 2 pickleball courts on the resurfacing of that. So that was the one question I wanted to hear the update. And also I'm asking if somewhere in the budget you can find to paint over the rough surface at the pickleball courts on Clinton Dewitt Park, because right now we can't use them because, and I've spoke to you, Teresa, about that, but I can't figure out how much the paint is, but we can't use them as they are.
That's something that we're going to get to, I think, later on. I don't want to steal anybody's portion of the meeting talking about capital needs and what we've been requesting, because the surface at DeWitt Clinton needs to be redone. It's got a lot of tree roots pushing it up. It's got a lot of cracks and divots, and the asphalt's really worn off. So you're not going to get a great surface with just painting. So that's something we put in our capital needs. Also, the Hell's Kitchen project is going to be spring. We're anticipating it starting in spring, and that does include 2 pickleball courts.
Excellent, great answer. I like your answer, and thank you to the board and thank you to the Parks Department. That's it.
Thanks, Catherine. Michael?
Hi, CB4. Thanks for having me back. I'm Michael Walsh from the Friends of Chelsea Green. Hi, Therese. I have a couple things I want to go over. Since our email exchange yesterday, is there any update on our tree, speaking of trees, for the sidewalk? You said you were going to look into its timing and see if we could figure out when it might be coming.
Well, that was something that I pushed back to our street trees division, and I asked them to, because they have everything in a big database that I can't even access, and so they haven't given me an update yet. But it's an update that somebody else may already have, so I need to reach out to Jordan, because he is also liaising with them to make and expedite things that are going on in your district, and I think your tree is on his radar.
Okay, great. Yeah, well, we've been emailing about it. So, and then I do want to thank you, yeah, especially for locking all those other gates. I think that was a problem we didn't know about that we kind of just learning. So thank you for being so quick to respond to that. And then I have a few other things. So there's great news about the Packer, even if it's going to take a while. Now the front of the park, can you use dry ice in the front of the park? I know we talked about the back and the sides, but there are still many holes, rat holes in the front, and it seems like that's a little more aggressive treatment. Is that possible? I know you said sourcing was an issue.
But is there more holes in the front? Because I've only seen one recently that I keep closing. Is there more?
I'll look
I've been
again
clearing
tomorrow.
out. I got
I was
got a
looking
hold of
last week. I saw a handful last week. So
Okay.
let me check again tomorrow. I'm sorry,
Okay.
my
I
friend
can stop
keeps
by
coming to
then.
visit me here.
You're
Um,
interesting. It's okay. He's
Yeah,
trying to
and
help.
then we had a discussion. So are you able to collect the trash later in the day?
What we've been doing is
Recently,
taking the trash that we remove from the cans and taking away from the park. We don't even
right?
stage it out front. And if you see it staged out front, give me
Yeah, no, yes,
a
we've
quick
discussed
email.
that,
The
right?
Patriots, they left it out front.
Right.
We have new staff. We have a lot of new staff, and it's a
Oh,
beautiful
great,
thing.
right. But
Yeah,
you're
it's a
not
beautiful thing to
collecting.
have. It's a learning curve. So
Yeah, you're not collecting in the second half of the day, though, are you?
sometimes we are actually
Okay. Oh, great.
our lockup crew sometimes has the ability because it's the APSW who has the CDL and he's driving the garbage truck around as well. So
Right.
it helps us on the days that he can do that, and it's usually the busy days we try to make that happen, which is like Friday,
Thank you. Yeah,
Saturdays.
I think that's a big help. And then, do you think going forward next summer that you'll be able to maintain that when you're in the height of summer and it gets busy?
Let me look at my
You-
crystal ball and I'll let you.
Okay, because you had talked about putting in a request for second shift. Did that?
I think we have as a department and individually and just for general staff, because we haven't really replaced who we've lost over many
Right.
years.
Okay. Great. I think that's it. We will keep talking, of course. I have been in touch with the neighbor Sally was referencing, and so I will get you a photo of what he wants cut back, and we can
Thank
discuss
you.
that.
Yes, that would really
Okay.
help me.
All right. Thank you, CB4. I really appreciate it.
Thanks, Michael. Susan? Is Susan with us? Hi, Susan.
Sorry. Hi, my name is Susan Wallet, and I'm lucky enough to live in Penn South, but unfortunately, my windows face 25th Street where the dog park at Penn South Playground is located. Back in April, the trial period began for what was supposed to be a couple of months, and after 6 months has continued due to the construction delays at Chelsea Waterside Dog Run. Despite the best efforts of many dog park users, dogs continue to bark, which is no surprise to me because this is how dogs communicate with us and with each other. That is how they show emotions, both good and bad. I believe the sound is made worse by it being placed between two walls, giving the sound has nowhere else to go but up. In addition, Penn South has switched from air cooling to heating as required by law. I have the not so wonderful choice of sleeping with my windows closed and white noise, or waking up shortly after 8 a.m. When the dog park opens. I'm hoping the dog park will close once the Chelsea Waterside Dog Run reopens, but in the meantime, I really would implore you to reconsider the opening be at a later time. I don't even see why the hours have to be the same 7 days a week. I would also like to mention that after all this time, nobody has reached out to the nearby residents. There is signage and a QR code on the fence of the dog park, which basically when scanned creates an email expressing support of the dog park. All users have to do is hit send and the email goes to Eric Botcher's office. This results in an overwhelming response from dog park users and not from nearby residents. I often get letters from politicians and government agencies, but I have received nothing that would ask me how I feel about this new addition to my block. I feel strongly that this should have been done during this extended trial period. 6 months ago, it was said that having the trial period was a great opportunity to see how this would work. It may have worked very well for dog owners, but not so much for others that are trying to sleep, quietly enjoy, live, and for some work in the vicinity of the dog park.
So Susan, I don't mean to cut you off, but this is definitely top of mind for us. We actually discussed this with Parks yesterday in our meeting and about the interim nature of it. And I myself have talked to Eric Botcher himself and his office and asked them what is their intention with this. So we don't have it specifically purposefully on our agenda tonight, but we are going to have, Marty, you can, if you want to chime in on this too, that would be great. We do plan though on having it maybe not in November, but in December. There's a reason for that, that I will go into later in the meeting, but we know there's going to be a lot of support for it and a lot of opposition for it. So we do want to hear the neighbors. We also want to, in talking with Janine and Jesse in our office, have the opportunity to put a mailer out, a notice that, hey, this is what we're going to talk about. We want everyone to be part of the discussion. And then this committee will take all of those voices into consideration and report back to Councilmember Botcher's office. So it's not that we don't hear you, we do. And we also have gotten emails that have been forwarded to our committee, the emails that have been sent to the CB4 office. Both in
What I'm saying is that they're actually going, they actually put, I don't know who put it up, but there was a QR code. You go there with your phone and you scan it. And it's like, I don't remember the exact words, but basically they support the dog park.
It's
so there's
tipping the
probably
scale.
hundreds
Absolutely.
of them.
No, absolutely. That's in fact, when we have approached the council member's office just to let him know about some of the concerns, they said, but all these people have said they liked it. So that gives us a little bit of insight, what you're saying. It gives us a little bit of context, I guess.
I would imagine, I don't know if that's a legal sign, to be honest, on the dog park that I could go in there. Obviously, I wouldn't do that because I'm not getting any support, and put up a QR code on public property. And I have expressed this, but anyway, I appreciate it. But every month that goes by, we are living with it. That's really what it is. It's like, it was 2 months, now it's 6 months. Now you're saying it's going to be, and I know this isn't your fault, but I just feel like 8 o'clock in the morning is driving me. I have to sleep with my windows closed. So,
Therese, do you have any comment on Stephen, we'll get to you because I'm guessing you're talking about this topic as well. Okay.
Yeah, there shouldn't be a sign up like that. I didn't.
That's what I was
see
going to
one.
ask you about, the QR
I'll go
code
by
on a
and
park.
check and make sure it's removed or approved.
well,
We don't
it's been
usually
there since
sometimes-
July at least. I don't go to the dog park. I just walk by, and I saw it in July, and a QR code. All of those emails are coming from.
On the front park sign or inside the dog run?
It's inside the park. It's a QR code. In case anybody gets the idea to remove it, I have photographs, and I put my thing up there to capture what they're writing to Eric Botcher's office. It says something like CB and councilman. However, it's the district that we belong to. So I think that we've been overly. You're going to be inundated with those emails, and they aren't people that live on the block necessarily. I'm not saying that nobody at Penn South there. I'm sure there are people at Penn South that love it, but they're overly represented in those emails. I'm sure there's no way. There's only a limited number of us that listen to it.
And also, Susan, just to add to it, we got word from Hudson River Park Trust. We think at the end of October, the dog park that they were renovating, it will be open. Chelsea,
The 5-star dog park. I looked at that. Oh my God.
so so that will be good.
Everybody please
At least
go.
dog owners there will have another opportunity, another place at the end of October. So maybe it will alleviate some of the dog traffic there.
I can also make the comment to our commissioner that there was a request to open later.
Great. And I think Stephen had a comment on this as well, so I want to go in that vein.
Yeah, hi. Good evening. I may have actually, I think I was the fifth. I may have cut a few people off, but I have a unique perspective on this from two points here. One, Teresa and I started at Parks together in 2008. I go back 15 years with her. I have a long history. I don't want to keep her all night because she's got 2 kids and she's the second hardest working person in the agency. You'll have to call me tomorrow who the first, but you know who it is because I work with her too. That's the hint. Anyway, so with that being said, similar to Susan, and there's a few other people here, I also happen to be a Penn South resident. I also happen to be an analyst with the unit that does, concession audits, and it's in my pros. I have looked at a good 100,000 inspections of parks over my years. Therese can verify this. It's crazy what's been going on with the dogs. But not only that, it's like the biggest problem with dogs, and that is dog people. Therese can tell you it's always not my dogs. So I get these pages about dogs attacking dogs in dog runs. It's very problematic. The barking but here's the real issue. I work for Parks. I didn't get any notice. I know this barking started like late March. A few people, we have a Facebook group for Penn South, made some complaints. They got handed to them. They got called names, this, that. This past week I got complaints. My wife got basically threatened, and dog people are always going to defend dog people. Here's the other problem. I have a photo, and there's another woman, a neighbor of mine, Deborah, who she has photos too. There's a key that is left out there at the dog run. This key has been duplicated because my window also faces over this dog run. I can assure you they're not every night, but maybe once a month. I don't know. And the whole lockup group, and Therese can tell you the whole thing. I understand, in this region, not everyone can be at every park at every time, but I can tell you well into the night, there are dogs barking there. If that door is if the first gate's not adequately locked, someone has the key. The dogs are going in there. In the early hours of the evening. It's not a good situation. And one, because I like I said, I know I don't want to keep Therese too long. That there's a similar type of very recently the dog runs. It's hard for me to give the whole inventory thing, but very recently within the park system, we've started having these paved surface dog runs. Most of them have been, gravel, have been dirt. A similar one, has opened in Queens, in Traverse Park, which is in Jackson Heights. One of the gentleman there, Krishna, is taking a very big interest in parks, and he's a comer in New York City politics for whatever it's worth. But what happened there is the chief of operations for the Borough of Queens, Jackie, who I go back even longer than Therese with. We went to high school together. Now I gave away my age, but has requested, we have done 19 mock inspections. We send out an inspector every week since June to make sure that about dog waste, to make sure that the dogs are not harassing people in the park. This whole thing, I don't know who pushed it, how it pushed, but it's really, as far as parks goes, it's kind of it's I don't know how to say it, but it's unprecedented. And
So Stephen, we understand, and it's what you're saying is not unusual to some of the emails that we've been getting to the office. We are going to have a more thorough discussion on this, and open it up to the public and put it as a specific agenda item, because we understand the attention that it needs. I don't know if that's of any help right now. I don't think the committee right now is prepared to officially weigh in one way or the other tonight, but we definitely, and we will alert Council Member Botcher's office that we are going to do so, that we are going to officially put it on the agenda item. So I hope when you see it on our agenda that you will come back if the time suits you and you want to further comment. That would be appreciated.
Leslie, I suspect it will be two conversations, one about the dog park by itself and a second hit at the same apple when we talk about the design of the Penn South Park. Both of those conversations are
Yeah.
going to happen here.
I think it'll definitely be part of the design discussion. It's just that from what we're getting is that design discussion is far away. You know, the design, the redo is a long ways away, and it seems that it needs our attention sooner rather than later.
Well, I'm going to check on the lock and the sign and see what's going on with how it's being operated. We did have quite a low number of staff up until last week, so the opening was not as consistent. Sometimes some mornings it was 6:30, some mornings it was 7:30, which means the inner gate can be opened by anybody who has the combination on it. So usually we only allow people in after 8 o'clock to be able to access the other gate. So it's something I'll get on right away if people are getting access overnight.
No. Thank you, Therese, because like, you know, usually like I need, but before this, I always needed like an alarm clock or my iPhone to wake up, you know, so I can get to Minion on time. But now because of the dogs, I'm up, and I don't miss my morning prayer. So it maybe in a way it was good, but thanks for your help on this.
Thank you, Stephen. Christopher, is this about the dog park, the Penn South dog run?
No, it was going to be about Pickle Court, but I did notice that there was a face missing in there in the attendees. Alan Oster's in attendees. He's still a part of this committee, yes?
No.
Oh, I miss Alan. When did that happen?
So is this about, well, Deborah, it's your turn anyway.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yes, Deborah, we can hear you.
Okay, great. Let me try and get my video going too. This is my first real Zoom call. And I am calling.
Wait. This is your first Zoom call?
Yes.
Oh my gosh, we're so happy then that it's us.
Yeah.
After all this COVID time.
Yeah, I don't work in an office, so I don't usually have to deal with it. I am calling about the dog park, but I know you don't want to hear it right now. But I would like to also point out that Eric Botcher is so very obviously biased in favor of the dog park. He won't talk to any of us who are against it. We're always pawned off onto Jordan. I've asked multiple times. I also asked his chief of staff, can we have a meeting with him, and get nowhere. His chief of staff said, well, we'll see you at the meeting on the 13th. And I said, well, can we like talk to him about it? Can we have a short meeting? And he kept saying, we'll see you at the meeting on the 13th. And he informs the people who are in favor of the dog park what is going on and what needs to be done. And those of us who live over the dog park, which you've seen just a small sample of those people, none of us have any idea what to do, who to call, how to express our frustrations. A lot of people have been calling 311. I've been trying to find a record of how many people are calling 311, and they won't tell me. They'll only tell me the calls I made. So all those calls are basically in the void because so many people are calling 311 about the noise, and we can't get any record of those 311 calls. We don't get any help from Eric. Eric won't listen to us. And he just sent out a big flyer about how he has this new proposal to stop the cars that make extra noise, and how the noise is really stressful to people and it gives them psychological problems. And he also wants to do the noise of the helicopters. He wants to get rid of that and refuses to acknowledge that this loud barking is noise. So I feel really at a loss. I don't even know who's in charge of making the decision about the existence of the dog park. I've heard it's the Parks Department. No one in the Parks Department says they're responsible or calls back. There's Jesse, who's super friendly and helpful. And then there's Jordan, who just is like, thanks for sharing, and I'll put it in the file. He had me send him videos. I send him videos a few times a week, and I say, what are you doing with those? He said, oh, I put them in the file. We know what that means. So this is really affecting those of us who live around the dog park because of the nature of the location, which is, as Susan said, between these two narrow, small buildings, so that it acts like a megaphone that accentuates and magnifies the sound. So it's just as loud, if not louder, in the higher apartments above and across the street and around it as it is in the actual park. And I mean, it's shocking when people hear how loud it is on the video. So I would like to know who's in charge of making this decision. who to speak to at the Parks Department, and how to get a record of all those 311 calls, because that's a huge indicator of how people feel, rather than just, you know, what Susan was talking about in the dog park, where anybody can go and with a QR code and just say, hey, you know, I want this dog park. I think they have like 600 signatures. There's not 600 people that live around that park. And a lot of the people don't live around the park. They're in the neighborhood, but they could easily go to one of the two parks, which are both 3 blocks away from this park down here.
Deborah, I'm actually glad you did come. So don't,
Okay.
It's not that we don't want to hear it. We definitely do.
Okay.
And we appreciate it. And like I said to Stephen, that I think this is echoing some of the emails we've been getting.
Okay.
And the office. So you're not alone with that. There are both sides. So Teresa, I don't know if you want to answer her questions, but when you say who is it, I think this is definitely an initiative from Councilmember Botcher's office. I think he was trying to fix a problem that he saw with some of the closures of dog parks that were around, and he was trying to make it more accessible for dog owners. And we definitely, when his office came to us to talk about it, we wrote a letter on it, and we stressed that this was a temporary solution, and that we would talk and get more input from residents. So thank you. We are happy about that. And again, we are going to have, I mean, I don't think does anyone on the committee disagree that we have to have obviously a further discussion on this?
Yes, we certainly need further discussion, and
Sooner rather than later, guys, I guess.
I would recommend that the people who have issues also send letters to the Community Board 4 office. That will help us in our process to know just how strong your position is, particularly those of you that live above the dog park. I saw lots of nodding of heads. I think we need to put it on the agenda sooner rather than later.
And I also think we're going to contact the leadership of Penn South, just to see if they're getting any feedback and what if they have any thoughts, here or
Well,
there.
most of the leadership of Penn South supports the dog park because there's a lot of people using it. They want the votes just like Botcher does, and they use the dog park. So I don't know if they really represent us because they don't listen. We've written them letters. They don't respond. You know, it's kind of like with Botcher, like we're just being treated like we're quacks. And, you know, I feel like no one is really paying attention to how disruptive this is and how crazy it's making us. And also that if you speak up in any way, you're really threatened by the dog owning community. I mean, they use words like, we have to find out who it is and get them, you know, so people are really afraid to speak up who are against it. And it's really getting bad. I mean, there's not much trying to keep it quiet anymore. In the beginning, they were trying to keep the dogs quiet, and now the dogs will bark for like 5 minutes straight and nobody does anything. And there's
Deborah,
so many dogs there.
I'm a dog owner, but I'm really, really happy you came. Like this is the spot for you. Really, the community board is where you get to say your piece, and it definitely will be taken into consideration, not lightly. It would be taken seriously. And you said you have Jesse's email, I guess.
I have Jesse's email.
Okay, so we will tell you when we have this greater, more in-depth conversation on this. But I for one, and I'm sure the rest of the committee really appreciates that you came.
Okay.
And we're glad you're with us this Zoom.
Okay, but who would be the contact in the Parks Department?
Therese, would that be you on this?
Yes,
Okay.
please.
And how do we reach you?
Share my email.
And what is your email?
I can put it in the chat. I think.
We actually don't have.
There's no chat.
Yeah, we don't
there's
have a
no
chat.
chat.
Can you just say it, Therese, and she can.
Okay, it's my first name is spelled Terese, and my last name, it's like dot last name, which is Flores, Flores at Parks plural, PARKS, .nyc.gov.
Okay, great. It's nice to know that there's someone to contact. Thank you.
Thank you, Deborah. And Roberta, I think you had your hand up.
Yeah, not a question, but just for you, Deborah, and also for other people who may be wondering, you can access the raw data for 311 complaints on the New York City's open data portal. They're updated from 2011 up until October 11th, 2022. So all that is available. That's not a data set I like going through it because it's such a big one. And I don't know if the office either someone in the office, you, Janine or Jesse or someone else might want to pull the ones related to this for that meeting, or I'm happy to help if I can be helpful at all. It's like the data is available. It's just kind of annoying to go through.
You know what, Roberta, maybe leading up to our discussion on it, we can do that. Is that a good idea? Yeah.
Probably. It would
Okay.
be informative.
That would be helpful. Yeah, thank you. Any other questions for Therese and Parks? I don't see anyone, Janine, anyone else in the attendees.
No, there's no one else.
Oh,
Chris has
Chris,
spoken.
I see Chris just put his hand up. I think you're not on mute, but we can't hear you.
Oh, no, that's because I have two microphones. It's a fail-safe. So Therese, obviously we know what's been going on in Greenwich Village, West Village, with regard to the playground and pickleball. My family was hands-on in working on beautifying Hell's Kitchen Park. There used to be a roller skating rink there. There was active roller hockey there that was meant for youth and adults.
Chris, I don't know if you could hear us, but you froze on us.
Keep on freezing because
Oh, there you are.
it's just when it rains, it breaks down. So Therese, this is once again about the pickleball courts at Hell's Kitchen Park. That park was meant for children in this neighborhood. And I'm really concerned about what is happening in West Village and what may happen in Hell's Kitchen Park. I think it needs to be emphasized that although pickleball courts may be outlined on that basketball court area, that space is intended for children and for young adults, teenagers, and that if adults were to utilize those pickleball courts in next spring after resurfacing is done, that adults need to acknowledge that parents and children of parents come first before their own recreation. I do not want 12-year-olds and 13-year-olds going out to play basketball have to come to confrontation with adults. So if that is primarily intended for children, I think we can avoid the problems that is currently happening in the West Village.
Yes, I'd like to avoid problems too. I think there's always a balancing act that the department has to do to make sure everybody has access for play, and it's something that we've been discussing internally at length because it's concerning everybody in every neighborhood because it's such a popular sport. So it's something that we're going to have to figure out come the day that it opens up and see what goes on and what conflicts exist so we can try to make things balanced.
I think there's a standard of ethics. There's a standard of ethics that needs to be applied and adopted very early, particularly with this playground, because it is a 40-year-old, 45-year-old playground that was protected, established, and reinvented by the block associations for the children of Hell's Kitchen, not used. Grounds throughout CB4, a play utilized by children. We see dog walkers bringing their dogs in and urinating in playground areas. And now, at Clement Clark, May Matthews Park, the handball courts, I was campaigning all year long, and there's a group called the Hell's Kitchen Rangers, and that's a youth street hockey organization. It's parent led and driven, and they were being prevented from utilizing the full scope of that handball area because people had put down tape and drew out their own pickleball courts. And so on the weekend, there was a gentleman actually doing paid classes for pickleball there and telling parents that they could not use that area until he was done with his classes. And I do not need that to happen in additional playground. Because guess what? If the complaints don't come to CB4, they come to the people who are most publicly present in their community. And that's Leslie and myself. And that's president. I appreciate keeping an open mind to this flare but always remember that parks is for the children first, particularly these parks are for the children.
Thank you, Chris. I think that's something that I keep hearing at all of our playgrounds, that we need to make sure that it's available to children, especially after school and times when they need to be there. So that balance needs to be struck there and in every playground. So it's something we're discussing internally, and hopefully it becomes a policy. So thank you so much for letting me know, and I'll look this weekend, see what's going on.
Thanks, Christopher. Anyone else before we let Therese go and have dinner? Okay, thanks, Therese. You're on mute.
Have a great evening. Thank you.
Yeah, bye. Okay. Marty, any comments before we move forward? Do you want to do the budget? Me? Okay. All right, let's dig in here. So as I said, this is our time now, I guess, to prioritize. We'll go over what we have written about this year. I think I sent a somewhat short email on some of the issues that have been long-standing, some of the projects we've been advocating for, to parks and actually, quite frankly, other city agencies. For budget consideration. The Penn South Playground is a big one that we can get off the list. That's a good one. It wasn't one of our top priorities, but it's done. It has money now set aside for it. So that is moved to what's called CS, continuing support. So it's not an official ask anymore because the money is allocated. But until it gets done, it's still under continuing support. It's not done till it's done. So that one we can go off the list. But if we can go over the list. I gave you the email. We can go in order. There are a few big ones, and why don't we just go in order? So the first ask that we have ongoing, and then we can get to the new stuff and see where that fits in, is our first ask last year in our priority from our committee was shore power. I think Carl, if anyone saw, Carl emailed the committee earlier. This has been a push from this committee. It was our top priority. It was also, very thankfully, one of the top 5 priorities for the whole community board, for all of the committees. We have had some response with it, that the city needs to it has to have some studies we're going to see, but I think keeping it high up on the list doesn't mean necessarily it's going to be funded tomorrow. But as Carl correctly pointed out, and which was our original line of thinking, is that it is a statement. It is saying the environment is important to us. We see what's going on with other cities. They're doing it, like Miami, fairly quickly. And this is definitely a priority. If anyone disagrees, that's fine. We can, and thinks maybe we should prioritize something else. But I think this is a priority, somewhat understanding it's not going to be done tomorrow, but that we want it to be done. If that makes sense. Gwen? You're on mute, Gwen.
Okay. It's been a long time since we had a discussion about this, and what I have been hearing is that that certainly is environmentally is horrible to have the type of diesel fuel that they use, coming out, and they don't have any other way to keep power going on one of those ships when they come in. And so that's why it's important. But I'm wondering at this point that you must be talking about the one that's over in Brooklyn, correct? No?
No, what we're advocating for is our Manhattan Cruise Terminal, the one that all the ships come in here in Hell's Kitchen.
No, well, okay. They tell me that the big ships can't get in there anymore. And
on the Hudson River? No,
Yep.
they're here. They're
Well,
here.
there's some, I know. But yes, I agree that they need to be done because otherwise they're going to pollute right there. But there's also, other terminals too. There's one in Brooklyn where the Queen Mary comes in, and some of the really big ones. And so I think it is a good idea because some of them won't come here if they don't.
Yeah, actually, Gwen brings up a good point. So some of us have been advocating for this for a few years. And a lot of the pushback, just to give you some context, was, oh, well, then, all the ships have to turn over to electric power. And they thought that would be prohibitive. When I say they, us, the city, what's funny now is that the cruise ships are actually asking for it because they are turning over their fleets to electric power. So it's a little embarrassing that we are behind now, and they want electric. So Gwen, your point is well taken, at least in my book. So thank you. Matt, go ahead.
Yeah, and maybe Leslie, you sort of answered the question that I had, because it has been some time since that I'd been involved in this conversation previously. And at the time, and this was over 2 years ago, EDC, one of the arguments was, well, by the time we do a feasibility study, by the time we actually go through our procurement process, by the time we actually install shore powering, there's going to be all this new technology that's going to make this obsolete. And I was just wondering, since I haven't been engaged on this, like, is that still an argument that we've been hearing from the city about new technology innovation? And by the time this is ready to roll out, there's going to be something else that's going to be done more efficiently or quicker or cheaper. I just don't know. And I'm just wondering if anyone here has heard anything more recently about that.
That's a really good question, because I remember that some of those arguments as well. I also remember an argument, well, if we do it, they're just going to all go to Jersey and dock. There were so many arguments against not doing it. I don't think they are arguing that point anymore, because now I think they have, I don't want to say committed to a study, but acknowledged that they should do one. And I also think, Matt, the pressure that they're seeing from other cities that are doing it now in somewhat quick succession is affecting, maybe, hopefully. So, I mean, I haven't seen, and I've been kind of looking into this, unless someone else can correct me, that there's any new fresh technology that's coming around the corner that all the cruise ships are going to turn over to, like hydropower or something. I don't, see that, but that's a good question, because I remember that was that's an argument point that I heard as well. So thanks, Christopher.
We research that,
Yeah, so I inquired from two different angles about what's happening with the cruise ship industry. So I spoke with the company that produces the turbine engines for Norwegian cruises, and they are going all electric, and even their smaller ships are going all electric. Secondly, from what I understand, it's the Empire Development Corporation. We were talking with EDC last time, and they had I think our larger conversations, when they presented to us and had no answers, it was because they had fired their more senior energy auditor who would have provided the answers for us. Shocker, they have not filled that position. So they're still not staffed appropriately for a study to provide for this situation. But thirdly, talking, this is me thinking in terms of today's headlines. We know that the mayor's office is, contemplating putting asylum seekers on cruise ships. These smaller cruise ships would be plug-in. They're not going to be using the Red Hook terminal. The Red Hook terminal is kind of like the city's bread and butter, they would likely be looking at the west side over here. So, you know, if that were to ever get greenlit and contracts were to be signed, we would be having cruise ships spewing diesel.
I think there's an update on that. I think that was nixed.
Great.
I think I'm almost positive they said they were not going to pursue that. I could be wrong though. I thought I read that.
Housing Justice for All, we're still very concerned about that as of this morning. So hopefully.
Okay, then maybe that was, yeah. Okay, that's good. Thank you, Christopher. Marty?
I just want to speak in favor of keeping this as our number one item. Even if the technology becomes outdated, I think our focus needs to be on getting those diesel generators on those ships to stop operating. And if in the meantime, all the ships turn to electricity, good for them. But it's those diesels that are a problem for us. And so I'm in favor of keeping it as our number one item.
Great. Okay, good. So unless anyone has any comment on that, we can move on and we can do the other ones fairly quickly, because I can tell you guys what has been our priority list with the parks specific. Oh, Katie, go ahead. Is this on shore power?
Real quick, I know
Yeah.
Graham Birchall is in the attendees section, and I think he may have had something mostly to say about shore power. I don't know if now might be a better time for him before we completely move on from the topic.
You know what? I think, thank you. I think that's actually a great idea. I saw him and I was going to let the committee discuss, but if it's on shore power, Katie, I think that's a good idea. Brad, can we go to, is this on shore power or is this moving on? Because I do want to go to Graham if he's going to talk about shore power.
Well, I just want to say that, you know, I think we really are lacking on utilizing alternative energy from the river. I've done a lot of research. There's a lot of stuff out there, and I know we have this NYU team that can maybe look into some alternates. But that, I think that should be a part of getting the power for the cruise ships. That an alternate way of using the river to assist getting power. So I'd like to make that point when we're discussing this. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. And I wrote it down also for the capstone group. Thank you. Hi, Graham, where's
Hi,
oh, there he
it's
is. I thought I saw him.
Graham Birchall from a downtown boathouse. We run the free kayaking program downtown, but this issue of shore power, and there's a related issue of acid discharges into the Hudson River that the cruise ships do. I'm fairly familiar with. So first, some news. The issue that I want to make progress on is the fact that New York State allows the burning of high sulfur fuel for marine vessels, whereas many other states don't, in particular California, Hawaii, and Connecticut. So I reached out to Senator Hoylman's office because he's definitely the go-to person on the issue of bringing New York State regulations in sync with California. And this has been largely done for automobiles and other road vehicles, but it's not been done for marine vessels. And it boils down to requiring that what California requires, and the laws are quite explicit. I would encourage you to reach out to Senator Hoylman's office because I dumped a lot of stuff on him. But here in California, they have to start burning low sulfur fuel. This is true for all commercial shipping, 25 miles offshore. And then whilst in port, they have to plug in, right, and not use their own source of power. There are other regulations that California has for smaller commercial vessels, like ferries, that require them to burn, it's called Tier 4 diesel engines and diesel fuel supplies. So in some, California has much higher standards than New York State does. And Senator Hoylman said he's going to look at it, see what he can do about it. The larger context here is that there are two marine industries to deal with. Oh, let's just come back to shore power.
Yeah, because Graham, this is about, so this discussion is where our budget, we're doing like budget asks.
So I'm just giving you the background that like in Red Hook, they have shore power, but most of the ships don't use it because it's not required by New York State. And the EDC will tell you they won't install it in Midtown if the ships aren't going to use it. And because it's more expensive than generating their own. So the solution to that is for New York State to do the same thing as California and Hawaii and Connecticut do and mandate it. And Senator Hoylman will look into that. And all I can sort of say is just follow up with him to see what progress he's making.
I think you are 100% right. You know, and our committee will definitely have discussed it, and we will discuss it about that.
Okay, I mean, I'm just saying the solution
mandate.
is really in Albany, not in New York City. You'll never convince the EDC to do this, but you can convince Albany for their own reasons to do it. Okay.
Thank you, Graham.
All right, bye.
Thank you for coming. Okay, so if we agree that and we can use those avenues when we follow up on shore power, which will be great. But let's move on. So our bunches of parks, and let everyone chime in with what you think would be reprioritizing or same priority. So Dewitt Clinton Playground renovations. We talked about parks with this yesterday. I wouldn't say they named it as number one, but actually I think they might have named it as, yes, they had their number one as well. It's been our number one for parks. Dewitt Clinton needs playground renovations. They need resurfacing of the courts. They need a bunch of stuff, including the spray shower and drainage lines. We think we might be close to this, hopefully, but this is a really big chunk of the budget. But I would encourage us to keep this up there. And then moving down, Dewitt Clinton Dog Park renovation. I want your thoughts on this. So they did do a coating on it. I was talking with Jeffrey about it. Even though they did a coating, we think we should still keep it on our list and talk about it in committee further about what we expect the dog run to look like. It doesn't have to be top priority because they did do some sort of coating that I guess is a nice temporary fix. But we will keep it on the list. It just doesn't have to be as high as it was. Moving down, the Gutenberg Playground sidewalk renovations. Parks agreed with us that this is the basketball courts in Hell's Kitchen. The sidewalks are a disaster. They are probably, they said, one of the worst they've seen in our area around the parks. Brad, go ahead. Or is that from before? Might have been from before.
Sorry, from before.
Oh, wait. Okay, no worries. Sally?
I'm on DeWitt. I wanted to talk about DeWitt Clinton. Yeah, okay, so I just have no familiarity what these numbers are. I would, if you know, I would like, you say it's such an expensive project and a badly needed project. What kind of dollars are we talking about? I also have problems in general with Band-Aids, when you talked about the resurfacing, to take shortcuts. How much does the shortcut cost versus doing it right in the first place? So that if we're doing the shortcut now, are we doing another shortcut in a year or two? If we'd have done it right in the first place, would it last for 10 years? I have no frame of reference on that. So if you have the information, I'd love to hear it.
Well, for example, like the Dewitt Clinton playground renovations, we're talking with the water, you know, the drainage, the resurfacing, they say that's about 10.3 million, something like that, which they already probably have half of that.
And they didn't want us to share the number.
Sorry?
And they didn't, I mean, they're not sure of that number.
Yeah, that was pre-inflation. So it might be different, you know, this year, that was last year. So that's a ballpark figure.
And it doesn't include restrooms. Does not.
It does not include restrooms, which is another ask lower on our list. Sometimes we ask them, sometimes it's good to parse them out. Like specifically, we want this because it's a specific line item. When it comes to Dewitt Clinton, Parks suggested that we put it as one item and just list in the description all the things. So I don't know the price for each, Sally. I think it's ongoing. Every year they kind of price it out. I shouldn't say every year, but every time a project comes up, they'll price it out.
Yeah, again, it's just a question of doing short-term versus long-term and the ratio of those costs. Keep repeatedly doing something wrong versus just doing it right. I mean, maybe the numbers there's such an enormous spread that's all they can do. And there really is no choice, but I was just curious if you did know.
Thanks, Sally. Chris?
Yeah, Sally, I hear your concerns, and I appreciate Leslie and Martine's context. When we think about the scale of Dewitt Clinton Park, we have to remember that this is the largest green space in Midtown Manhattan. There's really, you have Madison Square Park, and you have Union, Union Square, are equivalent or larger in size, but this is the largest green space that we have here. So that's going to be fluctuating through. So in the 6 years that I've been on this committee alongside with you and with Martine, we've always kind of piecemealed Dewitt Clinton with the focus on the dog run. I'm not necessarily sure how we want to continue approaching prioritization. One C or something to that effect, where it still falls in a priority line numerically of 1, followed by all the projects that we hold to it. So that way it becomes a very long, excuse me, my internet connection is unstable. Thank you, Rain. But at least it becomes one long line item bulleted all the way down before we hit our next priority on this committee. So that way we're no longer looking to, I don't know, save the Titanic, if you will. This is a park space that with potential development between 11th and 12th Avenue over the next 10 to 20 years, I think deserves a greater scope of focus in terms of financing and infrastructure and maintenance.
Thank you, Christopher. And we can keep going down the list in the order that we had it before, but not necessarily the order we have to have it going forward. Mccaffrey playground renovation. Listen, unfortunately, all of our playground equipment in most of our parks is outdated. Rings are missing, things are, bars are missing. So all of them can obviously have a redo, but we're just prioritizing and I guess in usage and newness. So we can keep going down the list. The DeWitt Clinton, Matthews Palmer and Chelsea Park bathrooms. The comfort stations definitely need renovation. We will definitely ask for it, not encourage that is one we'll get, but I think we should definitely put it on our list, and if not, move it as a priority. I'll entertain anything on that. But those are pretty much those were our capitals that we had before. Let's see, Parks also mentioned for capitals, the Gertrude Kelly, another redesign, Chelsea Rec renovation, the Chelsea Recreation Center. They need a little bit of renovation there. They need 101 doors renovated. The only hesitation I have is that we didn't discuss that. We'd talk about it with them. We didn't have a presentation about it. I don't know how everyone feels about that. But so those are pretty much all of our asks. We have a few more that are new that we can talk about. There are 3, including which is more the environmental side now, the universal composting program, which again, I think might be going along the lines of shore power, is more of a statement. Well, I shouldn't say more of a statement. We want it, but we should, how we phrase it and how we present it is important. The need for the corner public basket, recycling program, DSNY, and also EV charging stations, and how we were interested in knowing about the future of that infrastructure here in Manhattan. Candace?
My question was on the Parks Department, on the Gertrude Kelly playgrounds. That's when you said that we didn't have really a presentation, right? I thought they were going to fix like something inside, maybe around the sidewalks. I feel like that's what happened around that park. But I mean, I feel like maybe we should try to get more involved with instead of it being playground equipment, it's really not being used as a playground anymore. it's Google, everything is otherwise. And I mean, my friends have kids, and I asked them, and I was like, does anybody use this anymore? And they're on 16th, and I know we have a dog park problem. Maybe we try to force that instead of getting new equipment for a playground. We say, hey, dog park, because there's trees, it's soundproofed, and there's one luxury high rise, but I feel like they have dogs, so they should come down, but that was my comment about that one. I feel like as a board, maybe we should talk about it, or maybe talk to Parks Department about that.
I think that's a good idea before we put, I know this was not one of on our previous list or one we talked about. This was a Parks on their ask list. It wasn't on the top of their ask list, but it was, and they said exactly what you said, that it doesn't need a renovation necessarily, but a redesign, because there's an older group of people now using it. More, they were saying the basketball court's getting more use than the playground, or maybe move the playground to the side. It's the younger ones aren't using it as much, and they see a different age group using it. So I guess you're either talking to Parks or you're noticing what they're noticing.
Yeah.
So maybe we should, I don't know if we put that on our list right now. We haven't discussed it at committee. Maybe we can, like you
If you brought
suggest.
up to like a business improvement district, whoever's in that, Google, and say, hey, why don't you take over this park? Your employees can sit here and have lunch.
Yeah, I think generally they could be contributing anyway, but yes.
Yes.
That can be part of our discussion.
Okay.
So we have our asks that we already have. And usually you keep the asks that are not funded, because once you take it off, it's, it would be a little more not difficult to put back on, but it would show that we're not really that interested. So we would definitely keep all our asks that weren't funded. Maybe reprioritize them, maybe not. Some of these are now Parks that, hey, we're interested in this, this, and this. It doesn't necessarily mean that we have to even add them, especially without deep discussion about them. This is just what they said. And like I said, most of their asks coincided with our asks already on there anyway. Marty?
You raise an issue for me, and let me exemplify the issue by talking about the recreation center. The Parks in the 25th Street Recreation Center had two items: the 101 doors, which I think are locker doors, and the upgrade of the pool filtration system. We haven't talked about any of that. We did talk about the doors at one point some years ago, because I remember we were 101 doors in that recreation center. Didn't make any sense until I learned that they were locker doors. I spoke to somebody who was in their women's locker room, and as far as she's concerned, the doors were okay. So that leads to the bigger point. I think the list of priorities that we had in the previous year is the ones that we should just stick on and continue for the coming year. In the interim, in the year that comes, one of our meetings needs to be devoted to a discussion of the list of parks that we have, the priorities within those parks, maybe some walkarounds by some of us to see some of those issues. And so that next year at this time, when we're having this conversation, we can be much more intelligent about what we want to do for the various parks in our district.
Any thoughts on that? Marty, I agree with you 100%. I think it's hard for us to put, even though Parks asked for it, it's hard for us to put something on our request list that A, we didn't discuss, B, we don't really have intimate knowledge, we don't have any details on, it's just we're slapping it in there. I think it's better to go through it thoroughly, but unless someone has strong feelings otherwise, we can modify that. Gwen?
I just wanted to say that we did a walk around a few years ago. Do you remember that, Marty?
Matthews Palmer.
I'm sorry?
We went, I personally went to Matthews Palmer and to Hell's Kitchen Parks.
Oh, okay, that's right. We each took an area and we wrote down what facilities each park had and that kind of thing. And I don't know, that might be, if we can find it, might be a good thing to have with you if you're going to do this other walk around.
Well, the visit to Matthews Palmer that many years ago made it clear that restrooms are an issue and they are separate. We're not even really talking about restrooms in this set of asks, are we, Leslie?
No, the restrooms have been on our asks for Matthews Palmer for 3. And they're gonna stay. Yes. I think the 3, I can get them, but I think it was Matthews Palmer, Chelsea, and then Hell's Kitchen. Excuse me, Dewitt Clinton. No, those will stay.
Okay, we just have a list that has some information on it, which might be, useful. Is all the only point I was trying to make.
Thank you, Gwen. We're gonna look for that list. So guys, I guess the big question is with the 3 new things, what do we want to ask for funding for those, and where would we like to put them as our priorities? To remind, it's a universal composting program, the need for corner public waste basket recycling program, specifically for the corner baskets, and EV charging. Does anyone have any thoughts on those? Roberta?
I do, but I also have a question, if that's all right.
Both.
I guess. So the first would just be, there were a number of questions asked to DEP, to the agency, specifically relating to air pollution and idling. And I know that these are and remain issues for the district. Oh, I should also add, not just air pollution, but noise pollution as well. We've learned a little bit about the enforcement of both of these things, but I was curious if there was any potential ask there related to staffing. The DEP did note that they increased the staffing of their citizen, I think, air quality complaint task force, which is wonderful. But if there is anything that can be dealt with there, I know that that's been an issue, and it's not something that I think is reflected in the budget unless it's under transportation, and I just completely ignored it.
Yeah, I think it might be under transportation, and I think it would be a transportation ask. We can ask transportation, but like I was saying, I think we have to have a letter coming out of committee to add some, because we don't know what the detailed ask would be. We don't know what committee would think about it. We don't know what we would be asking for. I think we can definitely explore it.
I only ask because we did ask them. So I guess Jesse asked them. And that makes me think that it
qualifies.
Well, or that I assume Jesse wasn't just asking them for no reason. Right.
Yeah, I don't remember. I mean,
Yeah.
So you want to put something in the budget about that I don't know if it's.
I don't think it qualifies for this committee because I do not think that we've authored anything, but I'm also, when I saw it, it struck me that it wasn't in the budget, and I was kind of wondering, why are we asking about it, and why have we highlighted it previously and then not put it in the budget requests?
I can get back to you on that and ask trans.
No, totally. And I didn't mean to put you on the spot in that way.
No, that's okay. I don't
like it.
I don't know.
Hear about it.
Yeah.
I also, to the question that you actually asked, as opposed to the diversion that I just made, I think it is really, really vital that we push for the city's adoption of the universal composting program. Not only am I and many of my neighbors super interested in having an organics program here, but I think we've learned from speakers that to this committee that the only truly sustainable way, and a way that saves the city money to enact this program, is to do it universally. Furthermore, there are, the most privileged neighborhoods, the places with greatest homeownership, are going to consistently be the places that get those resources. And if we don't fight for this universally, it will leave places that have fewer resources and higher levels of renters behind, both this community, but then ones that are far less advantaged than this one. So I think it's pretty important to fight for it overall.
Great. Absolutely. So we'll put that in. Any more thoughts on universal composting, our wastebasket recycling program, or EV charging requests? If any should even be requests, Sally?
Yeah, I want to kind of second Roberta on the composting. It's a big deal. I mean, they're all important, so they're all worthy and they're all necessary. And I don't know how the decision's finally made, but I think the composting is really essential because of all of the domino effects of it, rats included. I mean, we're just feeding the rats every day. So it
So we should push it up to near the top.
push it up. I mean, it's a rat feeding program. But I also, when we put in our request and the full capital improvements and expenses, is Parks one budget and Environment another budget, or it's all one pot?
No, you lead me to my point. That's a great question. So when we do it, it goes to each agency. So yes, we have CB4 has the master list, right, of priorities, but in reality, which is more of a narrative, right? That master list is more of a narrative. In reality, that these requests will go. So obviously Parks is not going to get our shore power request. They're going to get our order of requests, what has to do with Parks, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. So if we put shore power 1, composting 2, they're not going to see that necessarily. They're going to see, oh, DeWitt Clinton number 1. So that's what they will see. So yes, I mean, we should definitely put the priority at the top, but also know that each agency will be getting their list, and it will still be impactful if we put composting above DeWitt Clinton renovation, it won't necessarily, push DeWitt Clinton down in the eyes of Parks.
Yeah, I mean, they should be parallel. It's not the same list. That's what I'm trying to determine. I mean, they should, 2 different lists. Okay, that's good.
Brad?
I just want to go back on something Marty was saying earlier. What we've learned is, we really got to aim small. So be really specific, and we stay on our top 3. The list is there, and then they respond. We've seen the response from the different departments, but I think that's really important. Obviously, there's always more things, but I think staying really, really specific always helps us. And to that point, and I've said it before, with the composting, the city mandated everybody to put in a smoke detector, right? It's the same idea that the city said everybody's got to have a garbage disposal. Now we're changing things on a massive level, right? And credits towards that to the building to switch them out and giving it to everybody. I just think we're missing something. So if we were trying to aim small, we'll say we want a garbage disposal in every house to help with the disposal. I just think just saying we want it studied and want universal pickup, let's be a little more innovative. That's what we do on this board, right? We try to throw something challenging out there where they see it. But just a thought. Thank you.
Thanks, Brad. Understood. I also do think, and maybe it's not true, I also do think though, Brad, some of this is highlighting commentary, right? Like it just shows where the board's head is at sometimes to make a statement that, yeah, you're right. A universal composting program is huge and big, and we should think outside the box and other things, but to list it high as our priority list is more of a, guys, this is what's important to our community and our people, and we hope you listen. So you make it a priority when you are doling out money and making policy. I think that's true too. But if anyone wants to disagree with me on that, I will welcome.
Yeah, I just say to that though, this list is for specific capital asks. And this is where it's a little different than what you're just saying, where we write letters. We do a lot of other things related to the bigger topics. But this is specifically going, we want money for this project in our neighborhood. And I get the bigger picture, believe me. But I think this is sometimes where we got to refocus a little bit and stay on task, and we tackle the other items of the way we do. I just think something to keep in mind.
I think that's a good point, and I wrote it down. I'll go back to the budget task force, because I know that happens in other committees as well, and ask them about that. If they
Yeah,
want.
Jesse always said, go specific.
Okay, thank you.
That's
Matt.
what this is for. Thank you.
Candace?
On your question about like for the letters for the past year and how I'd rank them, I feel like number one would be the wastebasket. I think that's an easy sell, especially with Eric really pushing the recycling, the wastebaskets, the trash pickup. I think that's something we're definitely get money for. And then for like a long two would be the EV charging stations. I think a big push would make sure we include the bikes, especially around maybe the NYCHA area, since that's going to be something that's they're going to the whole thing that happened with the e-bikes charging. So maybe we start thinking and pushing that. And then three would be the universal composting. And on that one, I want us to compost. Like I have a compost, but I actually walk it to 30th and on Hudson River, they have a little site where I can drop it off. And I noticed Manhattan West actually is doing it for their restaurants. So maybe we kind of enforce that and say, hey, you guys have to start composting all your restaurant. Because like I said, Manhattan West, Hudson Yards, we have all that food that's getting wasted. So that's why I ranked it the way I did. Yeah, that was my thoughts. And for the capital, I think we should keep it with shore power and then Dewitt, because like you guys were saying, it is the largest green space, and let's be proud of that and make sure that gets done.
That's a good point. Janine, maybe you can help me, or Marty, would recycling and composting, I know EV charging would be a capital. Would composting and recycling be expense? Because it's ongoing? Actually, Matt, you might know this too. Matt Green might know this.
Yeah, it would be expense. Most likely, unless there's like some recycling compactor that you're paying for.
Right. Like
again, like like capital is $50,000.
Yep.
It's brick and mortar stuff, but it would be expense.
That actually helps us.
Collection infrastructure is probably capital, and the set out and the actual collections is probably expense.
Because it's staffed.
Trucks and containers and so on is probably capital.
Right. We can talk about that too. Because as Brad said, to be specific, it's a Katie. I'm sorry, Candace, were you done? I apologize. Okay, Katie.
Hi, so a few things. One, in regards to composting, a big reason why the department chose Queens to test borough-wide composting is because they have a wide range of housing stock, from apartment buildings, of large size, small size, and single family homes. So it's a good way for them to study how universal composting would work overall in the city. We also really need to ramp up our capacity for food waste if it were to be mandatory. What Brad was saying about asking for something that's more tangible. I think some people have probably seen those composting smart bins that DSNY has in Astoria and in some places downtown. I think that would be, since it's a physical item, wouldn't that be capital and something that we can ask for within our district? And that could add, more accessibility to compost drop-off sites, have them in areas that don't have access to parks that have drop-off sites. And then also on the flip side of that, that may be something difficult because we don't have composting in our district. But when it comes to recycling bins, the hardest thing with that is what's going to collect it. The basket trucks are garbage trucks. So recycling is only collected one time a week for many addresses. So obviously that's split over a couple of days, but garbage trucks are pretty much out every single day on a very regular routine. So those public waste baskets are collected not only with their dedicated basket trucks, but also during the collection routes. We don't have that type of collection infrastructure when it comes to recycling. Even the bids that supposedly have recycling bins and recycle do not. I have seen the bags of trash go into the box truck for Times Square Alliance, and all of it get dumped into the back of a garbage truck at M4. And I asked the driver, oh, what about the recycling? You know, do you separate? He's like, nope, this is just all the bags. This is all the trash. This is where it goes. So I think it's a great idea. The problem is we have to change our social perceptions and activities with trash in order for it to be a worthwhile endeavor. Whereas the compost bins are locked and you have to have like an app QR code kind of thing to access it. I think that's a lot more feasible ask for our district.
So Katie, you would suggest when we ask for composting, or the composting subject is going in our ask, we should narrow it down, I guess along Brad's lines, to just the
Smart
composting smart bins, and forget about asking, not forget about it, because our letters are out there, but not ask for a composting program in any too big.
I think it's like a twofold. To say we continue to support unrolling a citywide universal composting program, but in the meantime, we would like to have the smart bins that have already been rolled out in other districts rolled out in our district to get people in the habit of composting, and as a way to, you know, lead the way into having, you know, Hell's Kitchen and, you know, CB4 in general loves having pilot programs. We have a pilot program for containerization going in. If we can have a pilot program for more accessible composting, it'll get people trained for when it becomes universal.
Got it. So we can narrow it down. Oh, Brad, good, your hand is up. I was going to ask you, is that kind of what you thought?
I love a great board member idea. Yes. Yes. I mean, super specific. I know Marty used to talk about Penn South when they had it there. Do we say, hey, we want 4 bins at Penn South? Just be very, so we could say, you guys can't get us 4, you know, like literally really specific like that, and maybe even a point. But yeah, I think it's a great idea. This is what I'm saying, more specific. It's better to talk on a topic.
So we'll get the bins and then no composting, no one to pick it up. Hopefully in the future.
I guess we got to ask for that. Yeah, that's fine.
Right. Okay, no, that's what we'll do. That's a good idea.
I will say on the point of the recycling though in the trucks, my kids, it's got to be in the right bin. It's got to be right in that bin. And I go, guys, it goes all in the truck. They mix it together and it goes. Right? And that's really how they do it. They separate it out later. So it's interesting.
That's actually not how they do it. But
no. I've seen the shows. I haven't been in one. But okay. But
I think Sally had that problem too. Sally said that too when she was the recycling, right, Sally? You said you saw that too. It was annoying. You said they put the recycling right in the trash. You're on mute, but I think we get it with your hand gestures.
Oh, I don't want to lose that opportunity. Yes, I witnessed it. One big thing container for all the baskets
so
dumped in.
Marty?
I want to support Katie's general statement and narrow it down to a few words. I think we should be asking for a comprehensive composting citywide plan, a universal plan. And short of that, in absence of that, there are a whole other number of little items. I don't care which one you choose, but I don't want to lose our asking for the overall comprehensive plan. And I also don't want to lose the idea of both Brad and Katie that we ask for something much more specific and possibly attainable. If not the large, then we want the small, should be our request.
You know, we can discuss at the budget task force. I'm sure they'll have their thoughts on that as well. And some of the other board leadership will navigate on how to ask for something big and small in the same breath. Different line items though. Okay, I guess moving on. Sally, sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, we're talking about the bigger and the small, which is all a fine idea, but what did we have a few years ago? Wasn't that the small? I mean, I had composting and then it was gone. I mean, it wasn't all over. So that we had the small. And the
I was
small
going to tell
gone.
Katie when she
So-
talked about the bins, we had the bins for like a blip in our, like we had. them
No,
for-
we had, well, at least my block, we had them for a while and
we didn't.
I mean, we loved it.
So
and it came
that
regular.
was pre-pandemic, right? Pre-pandemic
Yeah,
when the city
pre-pandemic.
had. So unfortunately, then it got shut down
It got cut.
citywide during the pandemic.
But it
And then
wasn't
when they-
citywide, was it? I mean, I'm just trying
No,
to.
it was in certain areas. Unfortunately, during the pandemic, they shut it down citywide. And then when they started to roll it back out, it had to be an opt-in program. And they only brought it to areas that had enough response for it. And unfortunately, our district was on the borderline. If they were to fund an expansion, we would be up next. But they've since decided to do this program in Queens. That's again going completely backwards from where they said, oh, we need opt-in, we need opt-in. Now they're just forcing everybody in. So they're trying to figure it out. I think a lot of it has to do with, changes in leadership and the way things are going, but it feels like we're getting closer to the citywide composting.
Thank
But
you.
all that shouldn't inhibit us from asking for a universal program as one of our asks. The machinations of the department shouldn't interfere with our request.
Correct. Yes, definitely. Okay, I think that was, does anyone have any other thoughts on the EV charging station, like that ask, or the recycling, anything else? Or no, or where it would be? Roberta?
What is the EV ask? I think that like this committee, but also transportation deals a bit with public space. I think there's always a concern, you don't want to give up like public space, particularly if people would be using it for recreational purposes, to support EV charging, despite supporting the adoption of electric vehicles overall. I don't know if there's like a way to put
So
that.
I think we asked, I don't think in our ask, we should be telling them where to put it. I think that those are separate letters and separate discussions. This is just my opinion. So anyone who disagrees, I think we should though be pushing for them to get the infrastructure in wherever. I'm not saying wherever, I'm saying for the ask that we need them to budget EV infrastructure in our district. It is a great need. It is a electric EV desert of charging. Now, where they go, I think would be a bigger discussion and a more detailed discussion. And actually, I think Janine if Janine hasn't phased out yet, I think Con Ed is, sorry, Janine, I think Con Ed might be coming in next month to talk about what they're doing by direction or working with the city. But I don't necessarily think it is we're in a position right now to say where. I don't think that we have come to that conclusion.
I agree. I only mention it because before you asked, at the end of the question that you asked, any ideas for where?
Yeah, right. I meant like, sorry, I should rephrase my question, but yes.
Okay, got it. Sorry for my misunderstanding.
No. Thanks. No, it's a good point.
Plus, there's the transportation committee and environmental committee overlap here. And we have to work with each other on the community board to accomplish this, not against each other.
Yeah, that's why our ask should be specifically for the stations and not where and that type of thing. I think Marty's right. Sorry about that confusion I just created. I think that is it so we pretty much have a good idea, right, guys, with our capitals. Expenses, we never really have a lot. I mean, I know there's always been increased funding for fixed post staff at the parks. More frequent street and tree pruning. We've always asked for that, and that would stay on. I think interesting, Parks did ask this year, which I think we can do because it's kind of under our previous asks of fixed or for staff, they said they would like us to differentiate between, or they mentioned parks enforcement and parks maintenance. I guess like what Sally said, with people jumping fences, or coming in, I think they really would like some more enforcement staffing, if we could ask for that, and parks maintenance. The one thing they did ask for, again, going back to, we haven't discussed this, it's a great idea, but I think we should discuss it further, and I would like to know more about it, is playground associates. I guess they have people coming in the good weather months to do parks programming, like, Zumba classes or movies for kids nights, stuff like that. And they want more funding for that, so they can have greater outreach for more parks in our district to have that programming, which is a great idea. I just don't think that, to ask for that, we don't really know about it as much as if we had a conversation or a presentation about it, but that will be open to you guys as well. If anyone had any thoughts on the keeping the park staff the way, and breaking it down the way they said, we already have it, the pruning, and then the playground associates. Does anyone mind if we keep the playground associates off this time, since we don't really have a really thorough understanding of it, or is that okay? I see some nods. Okay, great. So I think we're done, right, guys? I think we're going to keep shore power up there. We're going to talk about more detail to our other two, but then pretty much keep the same as far as the Dewitt Clinton being a priority. It's always been a priority. Maybe move the dog park down a little bit, but keep the bathrooms, the sidewalk renovations. Are we all in agreement? I want to get it on record. Great.
Yes, I agree.
Great. Thank you, Alice. Thank you, everybody. Okay, great. That's it. We can get back to new business. I already talked about capstone.
Leslie, can I get an actual vote for it?
Do we need a vote for
Favor?
that?
Yeah.
On what are we exactly voting on? Just kind of what we agreed upon?
Yes.
Because we didn't do it. We didn't do a formal list. But
Yeah,
okay.
but just,
Oh, let me get Sally before we vote. Is that okay, Janine?
yeah, that's fine.
Yeah. You're on mute, Sally.
I'm raising my hand for the vote. She's asking to see. a
Okay.
hand.
Okay, can we see hands for all in favor? of what we
Sorry,
just discussed?
Leslie, can you just repeat where the new stuff falls?
Sure. We're having, let me just get my list. We are keeping shore power at the top. We are going to put composting and recycling waste basket into expenses, which is not a big list anyway. So that will probably move to the top over park staff unless someone has any objection to that. And then the composting bins, the separate as Katie said, would be moved. Do you guys want it before DeWitt Clinton playground renovations or no? That's up to you. I think the bins itself can be a little bit lower because it's the bin ask, and the composting for the expense can be up higher, but what do you guys think?
I think you're right. I think you should keep DeWitt Clinton up there because composting is going to be, composting is going to be coming at the budget from many places, not just this committee. So I think it'll be covered. I think DeWitt Clinton is much more local focus and should have our attention. I just said that I'm very much in favor of universal composting, but it's going to hit the city from all kinds of places.
And you know what, Sally, you bring up a good point. We will talk with ACEs as well, because I know they will have some sanitation asks. So obviously we won't double ask. So if it's on their priority list, we can share with them and they can take it over, and that would be fine too. So it'll be covered one way or the other.
Yeah, this is DeWitt Clinton's chance. Yeah.
Exactly.
I want to say that I want to support Leslie's capturing of this stuff. There are lots of nuances here. When she's actually putting it down on paper, I want to support her decisions and suggest that when she actually gets it on paper, she shares it with us, maybe by an email. And if there are any severe objections to the ordering that she has put it in, we could talk about that at our next meeting. But right now, I think she's done a fabulous job of capturing this stuff. And frankly, I think we should move on after we've all voted in favor of this. Are there any objections so that Janine can get her count? I hear no objections. I think it's a unanimous support of what you've done.
It's unanimous. I have a follow-up question.
Thank you, Marty.
This may not be appropriate, but so we have all this planned out. Where does my request for a higher fence in Chelsea Green fit into the picture?
That's not a budget request.
It's not a budget request.
No,
Is
it's
it?
not on the statement of district needs.
Okay, so what's it called?
That's a conversation, Sally, that came up with our meeting with Parks. And it's a conversation that's got to keep coming up. I think we had a long conversation about it some meetings ago that we disagreed with the former administration about their 4 feet, and that we support. I think the number was 7 feet. It could be 6. We need, this administration seems also to be supporting the 4 feet, and we disagree with it, and we've got to keep saying it. You're right. It's not a budget request, but
It's not a budget request.
Another
It's
letter at some point.
Okay, I just didn't know where to put it and how we.
Actually, it goes really well now into it was under new business. We can put it on as an agenda item to talk about. And if some people might disagree, some people might want the 4-foot fence. We can discuss the pros and cons of both at another meeting, and then a letter could come out of it. As Marty said, it's a new administration. They might have some new thoughts on it. So we can do that, Sally. Is that okay?
Okay. Yeah, I just wanted to know what the next step is. Good.
Yeah, absolutely. So I also have one more thing on new business. I'm sorry, 2 more things on new business. With park fences, also, when we were going over with Parks, we understood that when we were talking about tree pits and tree guards, that I guess tree money cannot be used for tree pit guards or the replacement of with trees over 2 years old. That is an OMB policy. Parks, which stinks, because obviously the older trees and the older guards are going to be the ones that are damaged, that needs new ones. So I think we have a lot to come on our future agendas, because we should talk about that, because I think that should be, if not a letter, we're definitely going to have inquiries. I already actually made a first phone call about that to OMB to find out why is that the policy, what is the reasoning for that, and how can it be changed. But anyway, that's new business. My last thing on new business, and then we can get to any other comments before we close out this meeting, is our November meeting will probably be in person, and it will probably be at Javits, and we will probably see the roof. And not only that, but when Parks heard about it, they want to bring their interns to our meeting because they want to see the roof. So everyone wants to see the roof. So I think it's going to be a good meeting. Jesse and Janine are now working out details, because it's going to have to be hybrid. They're already working on projector stuff if we need it for presentations. Roberta, we're going to try and get the buildings electric thing on that agenda as well. So we're hoping it's going to be a good meeting in person. Knock on wood, nothing goes wrong. It doesn't rain. But FYI, I think this is going to be good for our committee. It's going to be good for our board, and it's going to be great with our relationship with Javits, because for some reason, I'm sure for many reasons, we have not had meetings there. There's always been some conflict. I think this is going to be a good opportunity and a good opening. So let's all hope November won't be too cold to have an outdoor meeting on a roof by the water. But that's it for me. If anyone else has anything, say it now or forever hold your peace until November. Okay, Roberta.
Thank you, Leslie.
You're welcome. Well, Roberta has her hand up.
I'm gonna be so fast. I'm so sorry.
Nope, it's okay.
There are a bunch of new rules proposed by the city surrounding local law 97, the building's electrification law. Your building may in fact be affected by these. Perhaps you own a unit in this building or the whole building. I don't know, one of those things. They're going to have a public hearing on November 14th. Our meeting is just before then, but if you are someone who may be affected by this, you can take a look at those rules. They also came out with like a list of which buildings are going to need to comply with some of the upcoming regulations, and some interesting stuff on standards. perhaps some rules surrounding the purchase of renewable energy credits, which I think may be of interest to this committee if you want buildings to comply rather than purchase credits. And I would recommend, if this is of interest to you, to take a look, and you are welcome as a member of the public to testify on that November 14th hearing.
Thank you, Roberta. And we will, like I said, get on the agenda to have a more thorough discussion about it. Thank you for bringing it to our attention. Anyone else? I'm going to have to buy pants now and not pajama bottoms if we're going to be in person. I swear I wear sweats every time I'm on with you guys. But okay, I guess that's it, right, guys? Great. Motion to adjourn.
Motion.
Thanks.
Thank
team.
you, Leslie.
Thank you. Anyone second?
Second.
Great. Thank you. Meeting adjourn. Thanks,
Thanks,
guys.
Leslie.
And
Thank you, Marty.
we'll be in touch about November.
Okay.